Here's Miller and Moulton. You're live.
And as we approach a couple minutes past the hour, top of the morning to you. How the heck are you? Thanks so much for being with us. Miller and Moulton at millerandmoulton.com and broadcasting live once again on the Miller and Moulton Twitch.tv channel. Bud Elliott to talk plenty of college football at the bottom of the hour. We'll also talk some specific college football with Matt Baker, who covers the sport and the Florida Gators for the Tampa Times. You can follow Matt on Twitter at mbaker.TB Times. Matt, hope all is well with you and life in the pursuit of happiness. How are you?
Well, it's election day in 2020, so I'm hanging in there as best as I can. Hope you guys are all doing the same.
Well, put it this way, Matt. We've joked around. I don't know how we got on the topic of if you're a hugger or not, but tomorrow's poll question on our show is, are you a hugger? Because we feel it one way or another, 49% of America will need a hug tomorrow. Dan Mullen needed a bit of a hug, it seemed, after Saturday. This was one of those moments for us, Matt, that cemented Dan as Florida's coach, because we feel that Florida likes a little arrogance with their coach. In fact, they almost demand it. And Dan Mullen, in his defiance at halftime, to me, cemented Gator love for Dan Mullen. Am I off base with that?
I think you're half right. I mean, obviously, you look at the Gators and you think of the Gators program historically. Steve Spurrier's the first name or one of the first names that comes to mind. And he definitely had some arrogance, cockiness, whatever you want to say. The difference between Spurrier and Mullen, as best I can tell, Spurrier wasn't beloved by everybody. I'm not going to say that he was, but he had a little bit more charm. He had a little more, when he spoke, it came across funnier. And sometimes when Dan would say the same things, it comes across a little bit more mean-spirited, I think. And I certainly think that, I mean, just judging by the reaction from what I saw in the Swamp on Saturday when he leaves the field and everybody's cheering and he comes out for a curtain call and the crowd's going crazy, he's certainly loved by the Gators, but I don't know that it's quite as universal. And I also don't know that it's as universal in the athletic department either. I think there's a chance that with some of the things Mullen said over the last couple of weeks, certainly packing the swamps for 90,000 people right now, that thing comes to mind. I could see it turning off some people too. So he's not at the Spurrier level, but I do think you're right. To some degree, the Gators need some swag. They need some swagger. And Mullen, whatever you think of him, he definitely has that. And he's not afraid to play, what I wrote on TampaBay.com. He's not afraid to wear the black hat. If that's what it's going to take to get his fan base fired up, to get his players fired up, and to win ball games. And, right now things are going pretty well for the Gators. So if it means being the villain for a week or whatever, then so be it.
But he needs to beat Georgia. I mean, let's be honest. He's cute. It's charming. Yeah. We'll put up with him if he can beat Georgia. But with the quarterback advantage.
Here's the thing. He came into the post-game Zoom dressed as Darth Vader the other night, right? Darth Vader is obviously a hated villain. Darth Vader he led an empire. And then he ended up, spoiler alert, overthrowing the emperor. No one hasn't done that yet, right? I mean, hey, you've beaten Tennessee and you beat Kentucky last year and South Carolina and what have you. That's great. He's done a good job. Obviously, you look at the New Year's Six Bowls, beating Harbaugh, beating Virginia. Those are all very good things. But to be the villain, to be a Darth Vader type guy, Darth Vader didn't become Darth Vader, but by blasting swamp rats on Tatooine. It's more than that. And at a certain point, if Mullen's going to, I'm a big Star Wars nerd. I'm so sorry.
This is awesome.
At a certain point, Mullen's going to cross that line into, he needs to build his own Death Star or to beat the one that's already there. And that's Kirby Smart right now in the SEC East.
God, I just feel like I have to get Matt Baker and Seth Everett together.
Really?
The Hall of Justice podcast and as a regular baseball guest on our show. I think you guys would have 6, 8, 10 days together where you might not be able to get a word in over the other one because he's just like you when it comes to this type of stuff. All right. Look, at Georgia's quarterback's play is awful. I mean, it's awful. As bad as Florida's defense has looked at times, this has to be a game where defensively maybe we see what can be the best out of Florida because I think they're playing a quarterback that shouldn't be on the field right now.
Yeah, and that's assuming that Stetson Bennett is still the guy for Georgia, and I haven't seen anything to the contrary. But again, this is 2020. If there was a time when Georgia was going to make a switch at quarterback and not tell anybody, if JT Daniels is healthy, on and on, this would be the time to do it and kind of trick some people. So if it's Stetson Bennett, I think you're absolutely right that the pass game has not been particularly good, especially we don't know about the status of George Pickens, a very talented receiver for Georgia. I would still be concerned if I'm a Florida fan about the run defense, because Georgia, over the years, they have been able to run the ball very well. But no, I think you're right. Especially when you look at the progress that the Gators defense made against Missouri, even though they were down like 80 guys in the secondary. They made some progress based on the off week and everything else, and maybe they found some weaknesses in their own armor that they were able to fortify. So the Gators defense made some progress. They still got some ways to go, and I don't know that Georgia's going to be the one to capitalize.
Matt, if you're a Florida fan, you feel like we've got a quarterback that can take advantage of a defense, but he has to have some time, and a little bit of a running game would be nice. Lately against Georgia, Florida quarterbacks have had no running game for help and not a whole heck of a lot of time either. When you look at this offensive line, do you think it can hold up in this battle? Because this is clearly the best team that Florida is going to face at the line of scrimmage. I mean, this is the heavyweight matchup. Is this line ready for it?
I don't know is the bad answer to your question, but I mean, we're going to see, because you're exactly right. This is the best line that they have faced. This is the best team they faced. Georgia's defense is going to be depleted to some extent. I don't think we're quite sure to what extent. You take a guy like Richard LeCount away at safety, one of the best couple safeties in the country. I think it was going to be interesting to watch him match up with Kyle Pitts potentially. And obviously you take him away from Georgia and hope he gets well soon. But that's a big advantage up for the Gator side. But you're right. It's going to come down to some degree to whether the Gators offensive line, which is certainly better than it has been, is going to be able to block well enough to give Kyle Trask time to throw. And a run game would help. I'm not quite sure how that's going to shake out. But look, the Gators receivers have been very good this year as a whole. Kyle Trask has been very good. And you look at the way Georgia's defense played, particularly the secondary, played against Bama a couple weeks ago. If I'm Dan Mullen, I'm looking at that. And no, the Gators don't have Bama's receivers. Bama's receivers are on another level. But they still have very good receivers. And you look at what happened there, then you take away one of the best players on that Georgia secondary. And you start thinking maybe there's a way to do that. But you're right. For that to happen, for them to be able to pick that apart, Trask is going to have time to throw.
There you go. And Mark, that to me is the big difference. Like, the reason Alabama was able to eventually exploit Georgia defensively in the second half was Alabama's offensive line won the second half. Florida's offensive line has gotten their butt kicked in this matchup now since Dan Mullen's been the head coach, and even McElwain's last year. And if they can get a stalemate at the point of attack, Mark, I think they win.
I do too, because, it's not been the Florida offensive line that's been the problem for Florida. They've done just fine moving the football. And while they don't have the receivers, that Alabama has, they've got the best tight end in the country. And Pitts is a difference maker. He is a guy that you have to defend against differently. So to me, I think he's one of the X factors, because that gives Trask the release point to get rid of it a little earlier at times and maybe deflect what's going to be a Georgia pass rush. I don't know if Georgia, they can account for anybody because their defense is good, but I think Matt Pitts is a guy that has had big games, is going to have a big game for the Gators to win.
No, I think you're exactly right. I mean, he was, through the first couple of weeks, certainly he was one of the best players in the country. I mean, potentially on Heisman list, and the layoff kind of calmed some of the buzz down. But he's too fast for linebackers to defend and too big for safeties and corners to defend. And there's not a lot of guys who can really get him one-on-one and win that matchup. And so I don't know that with LeCount gone, I don't know that Georgia has one guy. So I don't know how they're going to defend him, if it's a rotating cast or what have you. But I'm I would take Mullen and trust Mullen to find the ways to exploit that matchup and get the matchups he wants on Pitt. The other kind of X factor I would say here too is the running backs in the receiving game. Malik Davis has shown some progress in that at times this year, and I'm curious to see how the Gators use him again. Especially if the Georgia defensive line gets a lot of pressure, maybe they do a lot more kind of safety valve stuff and screens to Davis or something like that.
Is Florida ready for this game as a program? Kirby's still trying to get Georgia to the point where they're ready for Alabama. He's got them, I think, to the point where they're ready. They just haven't been able to get over the hump. Does Dan have the program to the point now where they're ready? They're not playing catch up. This is an even fight. Do you feel as if Florida is ready now for this game?
But still not an even fight. I mean, Georgia over the last few years has been recruiting at an elite level. It's basically them, Ohio State, Bama, Clemson, although Clemson doesn't sign as many guys. That's pretty much it, that are recruiting at that top tier level. And Florida hasn't been there. They've recruited well, but not at that level. Georgia has dudes on top of dudes on top of dudes. And Florida's not there. And I don't know if Mullen is ever going to be able to close that gap 100%, just because Kirby's a great recruiter and Mullen's not at that level. The difference is that Mullen is a great X's and O's tactician. I don't know that there's a lot of better X's and O's guys in college football than Dan Mullen. And that's the difference maker to me as I'm thinking about this matchup. So I don't know that he has his team completely ready. He doesn't have top to bottom, Georgia has more talent. And usually in college football, the team with the most dudes wins. Mullen is a difference maker, though. And here's the other thing. Go back to January before all this other crap happened. What I was thinking heading into about this game in this season, if not now for Florida, then when?
Yep.
Is the Gators aren't out recruiting Georgia. They've got a veteran quarterback. They've got a veteran offensive line. They've got really good receivers. They've got a really good tight end. They have some talent on defense. And Georgia's got a new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, on and on and on. If not now, then when? I'm not going to be fatalistic and say if they don't win, then they'll never beat Georgia. And that's not how the sport works. But this is the best chance they've had since Mullen has been there. And when you look at the roster and the makeup of everything, sitting here where we are right now, this is going to be their best chance. So if not now, then when?
Matt, if Florida scores X number of points, they win. What's the number they have to get to against this Georgia defense in your eyes to get a victory?
Well, I don't trust Georgia to score more than 28. And even that might be a little bit generous. So if they can get 31, and I don't know that they can, but if they can get 31, I feel really good about the Gators' chances. Yeah. Just because Georgia's offense, I don't think it's not particularly good, and we don't know what all will happen in terms of injuries and what have you. So if they can get to 31, I feel really good about Florida's chances.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you're a Florida fan right now, if I give you 24, would you take it? I mean, they've scored 17, 17, and 7. Now, take the 7 out of the equation. That was McElwain's last year, and he got fired the next day. The program was a mess. But, Dan's only been able to put 17 on the board each of the last 2 years. I think Matt and Mark, 24, 27, got to get to the mid to upper 20s.
I was 27, 28 is kind of where I was thinking. If you could get there, I think we've got a hell of a football game. If you can get mid-20s, mid to high 20s, I think we've got a hell of a football game.
Matt, do you think there's any legs to what took place Saturday night, or do you think that it's over? And I don't mean the Darth Vader thing, because to be honest with you, Dan probably had that in his mind that it was Halloween. He was going to break that out after the game, no matter what. But do you think that the brawl is there any legs to it with Dan and his bosses at Florida, or is that a 48-hour thing and it's now over?
Well, his direct boss at Florida, Scott Strickland, the AD, Scott knew what he was getting into. He worked with Dan at Mississippi State.
Yep.
Dan had a reputation before he came to Florida. Even when he was at Florida as an assistant, he wasn't the easiest guy to work with. He wasn't the Mark Richt, everybody loves him. That's not who he was. That's not his personality. That's not who he is. So Strickland knew what he was getting into. And, you can argue whether Dan crossed the line at some point in the last month, either with the 90,000 or whatever you think his role was in the brawl the other night. But they knew what they were getting into. And here's the thing: if he wins, it doesn't matter. If he loses, it doesn't matter. That's the thing about golf. If you win, no one cares. If you lose, the rest of the stuff is just complaining and whining. So if Dan beats Georgia on Saturday, I mean, he's not going to get fired or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. So as long as he keeps winning and keeps the Gators in a national conversation, he's doing his job. And I think his bosses know that some of the other stuff they just have to take to have a program that's in the top 10 nationally.
He's Matt Baker, and he covers the Gators for the Tampa Bay Times. You can follow him on Twitter at MBakerTBTimes, MBakerTBTimes. Matt, safe travels on Saturday. Enjoy, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
All right, you got it. Thanks, guys.